Chandra Jay Ranjana
Welcome to First Friday 5. It's the first Friday of the month, and we're watching 5 episodes of a TV show and then judging it based solely on those 5 episodes. Today's show is The Curse. I'm Korbin Zvokel.
And I'm Kody Webb.
And today, the 5 episodes of The Curse we are discussing are Season 1, Episode 1, The Land of Enchantment, the pilot. Season 1, Episode 2, Pressure's Looking Good So Far, the lowest rated episode. Season 1, Episode 8, Down and Dirty, my pick. Season 1, Episode 9, Young Hearts, the highest rated episode. And Season 1, Episode 10, Green Queen, the finale. Kody, everybody loves a Palmer.
Oh, Palmer.
Arnold Palmer. Ice tea lemonade, it's a joke.
Oh, it is a joke
from comedy school. Okay. I've been working on things. I've been trying to come up with some jokes to start things off with. So,
it's a great like intro here because dealing with like cringe comedy, that fits right in.
This show has a lot of similarities to our show in that way. At the very
True.
least.
Nathan Fielder is it's one of my role models for comedy, so shout out to him. But I'm excited to be here, man. I love doing First Friday 5 episodes, obviously here, delving more into the TV side of things. So I'm pretty jacked. Obviously bringing in a Paramount Plus show here, which
with Showtime.
With Showtime.
Paramount Plus with Showtime. I will let you know, Kody, I had a regular Paramount subscription, didn't work. Had to let that end, make a new account, and get a free trial of Paramount Plus with Showtime. Shout out to Benny Safdie for the promo code there.
Yeah, true. Shout out Benny. But yeah, you could ask for my account again. You didn't do that. But yeah, I'm excited to talk to Curse, man. This is I think it's gonna be a wild episode. I don't know what to expect. Also, off the bat, is like cursing allowed on this show? I don't think it's ever established, right?
I think we've long established that it is heavily allowed, considering we both have never failed to censor ourselves, Kody.
True. See, that's a good pun. That's a good pun right there.
Thank you. Great work. You came up with that one prepared. If you listen to our appearance on the Rough Cut retrospective, you're locked and loaded with the puns in terms of 2023 releases. And of course, Kody, this TV show is a 2023 release. It was one of my favorites that I talked about. Here we are at First Friday 5, February 2024, a year after our very first Friday 5 episode. And we're covering The Curse, a show that potentially could have a second season, but we're going to say is a piece as a limited series in one season.
Yeah, later on, I'm definitely going to pitch a second season. I don't know about you, but this is interesting too. Yeah, it's the 1 year anniversary of First Friday 5. I wish we were doing a different show for this, but I'm glad we made it a year, man. Here's to another year of Triple F.
Very excited to cover a lot of new TV shows going forward in 2024. We have done one other show that was a season long only, and that was the National Treasure one. That was officially canceled. This, Benny Safdie, I think, has said, like, oh, maybe we could do something in the world. Maybe it's an anthology. Who knows? But for now, I think this is a pretty self-contained story. A little bit of background on what is The Curse. I will say right off the bat, spoiler alert. If you have not seen any of this show, I would recommend watching it in its entirety. If you don't think you can handle that, watching 5 episodes of it is a great way to do it. Check out the 5 episodes that we're watching, the first 2, and then the last 3. I think it's a good way to just get a good 5 hours as opposed to 10 of this TV show. It is a American satirical black comedy thriller television series, Kody, written and mostly directed, created by Nathan Fielder and Benny Safdie. Of course, Nathan Fielder, creator of Nathan For You, the Rehearsal show that we've talked about and enjoy. And Benny Safdie, director along with his brother Josh, and writer of movies like Good Time that I know you love, as well as Uncut Gems, a movie we've covered on the main feed of this podcast. So it's a lot of people that we like creating this interesting TV show.
I love everybody involved. I think it is super cool, kind of the creative control that was given to these people. Nathan Fielder obviously had a long-standing TV show, Nathan For You, on Comedy Central. He's done other really cool things that I like. The Rehearsal, which is on Max. The first episode of that I really love. So I was excited to see kind of what he was going to do next. Like you said too, I mean, you got one of the Safdie bros attached. He's done tons of stuff too. I mean, he was just in Oppenheimer, I believe, unless that was his brother.
Yep.
Getting mixed up. And then of course Emma
Weird
Stone
accent.
is an executive kind of producer on the show as
Oh
well.
yeah,
So she's
very creative involved.
yeah. So I mean, that trio is, I mean, about as good of a trio as I think you can come up in Hollywood these days. So yeah, just off those names alone, I was pretty excited coming into the show.
So the basis of the show is Nathan Fielder and Emma Stone play a married couple who are hosts of a HGTV show that they're basically trying to get made, where they're doing house flipping, but in a positive way. It's flipanthropy. They've built these passive homes built with all this like mirrored exteriors, and it's great for the environment. And then they're also doing all this other great community work. It was originally conceptualized as this like 30-minute comedy show, and then as Fielder and Safdie were writing it out and developing it, it turned into an hour-long kind of drama, dark comedy, Lynchian, surrealist, complete work that transformed really interestingly. It deals with a ton of topics and covers a wide variety of things. I'll just highlight them here. The world post COVID, gentrification, reality TV, specifically, house flipping shows, indigenous land and art, and indigenous rights, casinos and gambling, the ideas of passive living and eco houses, performative white liberalism and virtuous signaling, sustainable capitalism, mysticism in other cultures, a lot of themes of religion, particularly Judaism. It's just combining all of these things with the backdrop of this reality TV couple to create something that is extremely unique in tone. It's kind of a thriller, kind of a mystery at points, kind of a comedy. It's all over the place. I think it either works for you or it doesn't, like a lot of Fielder's work and honestly a lot of Safdie's work as well. Surprisingly for me, as someone who's not a huge fan of Uncut Gems or Good Time, this really hit for me from episode 1 to 10. What did you feel about these 5 episodes, just kind of getting into it before we break them down individually?
The disrespect towards Uncut Gems and Good Time is always not allowed. But yeah, I mean, my perspective here, I think, is going to be on the opposite end. I didn't really join the show, if I'm being completely honest. So this might be an interesting conversation back and forth. But I do like kind of how you described it there too. I mean, so many different tones. I mean, even the 3 that you pointed out there, I think there's probably like 10 others that we delve into throughout the entire series. And looking at these 5 episodes too, I think is going to be interesting because I feel like you could have condensed it down a little bit, shorter episodes, but some of them like have some interesting stuff and kind of delve into different directions than I had thought going in. So I think the unpredictability for me was definitely one of my favorite parts. I'll get into a lot more negatives coming up, but I think this is a good show at least to talk about. And like you said, I think it's definitely on the spectrum of it's going to be something you really like or something you really dislike. So I think we're going to have both those spectrums at least kind of out there on this episode, which is cool.
Whether you like it or don't like it, it begs to be talked about.
Yeah.
It's a cultural moment. I know, like I just wanted I forced you to do this, Kody, just like make sure that you watched it so we could have a discussion, because there's really no one that I know in my life, even some of the people that I work with that are like really into movies. I'll be like, you check out The Curse yet? And they're like, nah, I gave up on that. Do I need to? And I was like, please, like someone's got to watch it. So I texted Jackson. He's a big Nathan Fielder fan, and even he's not up on it. Hopefully soon.
Yeah, basically this episode is just so you had somebody to talk about the series about.
Isn't
So
that what the podcast always is, Kody?
props to you, I guess. Good point. I did make you watch Star Trek, so I guess we're
Yeah.
even. But yeah, I think this should be a fun one, man.
Do you know where the inspiration for The Curse comes from, Kody?
There was this YouTube video where Christopher Nolan was like directing this panel with, it was just Fielder and Safdie, I guess, so it wasn't really a panel. But I watched probably like the first 5 minutes of that and I got the basics of it. But I think Benny Safdie was just kind of a fan of Nathan Fielder. Kind of just, he was a fan of his Comedy Central show. And then when they eventually were both kind of in New York or LA, whichever one it was, Safdie kind of just like reached out to him and just wanted to be his friend, basically. And then they had a lot more conversations about just like random stuff. And then Nathan Fielder actually had a story where in his past, somebody had like said to him, like, I curse you or something. and then that kind of just went, 20 different directions, which is obviously what we see in the show. But I believe that's the gist of it from that Nolan interview.
Yeah, you got it pretty spot on. I watched the same Christopher Nolan Q&A, which is a pretty cool thing to be like,
Yeah,
Christopher Nolan moderated a Q&A of Safdie and Fielder, and he's like clearly appreciative of having seen the whole show. He admires their work. Safdie, he obviously cast in Oppenheimer for a reason, but he appreciates him as a director as well. They've done a few of those different Q&As. I mean, they were showing the first couple episodes at the New York Film Festival. They've kind of been around at the Lincoln Center. The marketing of this movie in general has been very interesting. There's a great parody of the Anyone But You trailer premiere where they like Emma Stone and Nathan Fielder mocked Sydney Sweeney and Glenn Powell amazingly. And I mean, Fielder's really probably the best at just kind of devising these unique ways to get things out there. I mean, I remember even like sometime last summer, there was like images of Emma Stone and Fielder at a Dodgers game. And that was just big news. And it's like, oh, are they filming something there? Is it for the new show? And they're just talking like, they're just always kind of out there in the right way. They're on Jimmy Fallon doing characters, it's fun.
I did see that as well. Yeah. With Fielder going like full hippie vibes, which is really fun. But I love Nathan Fielder. Like I said, I think, like you said too, he's a marketing genius in a sense. That specific Anyone But You kind of anti-promo was just absolutely
They work quick.
Yeah, they know exactly what they're doing at all times too. So I think Nathan Fielder comedically is about as good as it gets. The problems that I have is he's kind of delving more into, like you said, more of like a thriller, serious dramatic stuff here, which obviously is more Emma Stone's kind of bread and butter. So, although she's really good at comedy too. So, I mean, it's tough it's like a 10 genre blend here. Like you name every genre available, and it's kind of in this series somewhere. But I agree too. I mean, if Christopher Nolan is like showing you respect and like Q&As, like him saying he was like ambitious and he liked it a lot. I could say that about Interstellar too. That doesn't mean it's good, but props to Nolan because he's a dog. But yeah, I think this series is definitely a strange one.
It is funny, Kody, because you admire Fielder so much, and I know you love the rehearsal. I know you said you even were rewatching it to cleanse your palate after seeing this. And this show, in a lot of ways, is kind of like, what if Nathan Fielder could just write everything, like all of the characters, like get the exact responses he wants? It's a cool blend of Fielder, who's lives in nonfiction, kind of pulling them into the fiction, and Safdie, who lives in fiction, kind of pulling them into a nonfiction world. That's another thing they both talked about in that Nolan Q&A. Before we dive in, what is it? Is there one thing you can say that just doesn't work for you about this?
Honestly, I think the thing that I dislike the most is kind of the acting from Fielder. And it's kind of that in-between gray area where, of course, he's like been playing the same character, for 10 years that I've seen him do it or whatever. But you're supposed to take him like completely seriously, I feel like at all times. So it's definitely a big tone thing for me where it is kind of all over the place. Sometimes even for me, I'm not like, was that a joke? Are they trying to actually say something? Because like you said, too, this show is saying a ton. Like it covers a lot of kind of like interesting and deeper topics on just like society. And like I said, like Native American culture is a massive theme that I liked. Also, too, like Benny Safdie's character. I don't know. I feel like his inclusion, if you just cut that straight out, maybe the show's a little bit better. So I don't know. There's definitely a few things, but honestly, like Fielder's acting is probably my least favorite thing in the series, which sucks.
I think that's definitely fair. The sincerity is key in this show for it to work. And when
he's not believable. Yeah, he's not believable.
And when you've got Emma Stone, who is giving a hell of a performance, it's tough to really compete.
I mean, when you're going up against an Oscar winner, you got to bring some chops. And sometimes it's there, but I think sometimes it's pretty noticeable too.
I 100% respect that opinion. Let's move on over to the theme song, Kody. We're going to talk about the title sequence and the theme song and rank it against our other First Friday 5 competitors. This doesn't really have a theme song or title sequence. Essentially what happens in every episode, at some point there's a trippy freeze frame, dissolve, transition into the curse title card. And the score is playing. The score is very asynchronous throughout. It's kind of unnerving, kind of plays up into the thriller vibe. I know Safdie mentioned it's kind of supposed to reflect the emotion of the characters, but not necessarily what you're seeing visually. But then also Nolan was like, well, the emotion of which characters? And he's like, well, maybe just the emotion of everything and the aura of the scene. And well, which was some good director bullshit. But
Yeah.
it in terms of a title sequence, I would say this is pretty weak.
I mean, like you said, there isn't really a theme song to rank here, so it'll be interesting where we slide it in. But it's just, of course, that one title card, like you said, the curse, and it kind of pops up like randomly too. Like I think early on episodes, it's probably within like the first 5 minutes. But then if you get like deeper into the season, I know one specifically, it shows up like 20 minutes in. So it's kind of random at times, which is fun. I don't hate it. I mean, if you're not gonna have like a full-fledged theme song, I like that they kind of keep you off track of where exactly it's gonna pop in. And it kind of has like the mirror vibes to like their passive homes too. So I thought that little detail was kind of cool too.
There's a shot of Emma Stone's face, particularly in the second episode, where it's her looking at the passive foam and the way the mirror reflects. I mean, you can even see it in my background right now. It's very similar to the distortion effects that happen. I think this is above Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Kody, which is currently our lowest ranked. Do you want me to give you the
Oh, I don't know
rankings?
about that. Yeah, go for it.
So from the top to the bottom, Succession, Psych, Office, New Girl, Gossip Girl, Scrubs, National Treasure, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
It's tough because I think this and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. are similar. I mean, they don't have any sort of theme song really. And this one, I mean, it's just straight up the curse. I mean, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., between the different seasons and stuff, they changed it a little bit. They kind of made it cool with some Ghost Rider stuff, some space stuff. So obviously this only has one season, so it's hard to compare. If we just want to compare like season 1 to season 1, maybe I would give the curse, the edge, but I think from the other seasons combined, I personally would put the curse dead last. But what do you think?
Gossip Girl.
Yeah, how is that so
Better,
high?
The Curse or Gossip Girl? Throw that out there.
The thing is, I think like even though National Treasure is a terrible show, I think that theme song is still better than Gossip Girl. I mean, it's like
XOXO
it's like
Gossip Girl. Kristen Wiig, dude. Or yeah.
Kristen Bell.
Kristen Bell, that's who it is.
Shout out Ghostbusters.
I like Dax Shepard, something.
You think Kristen Wiig's in the new Ghostbusters?
Shout out Veronica Mars. I don't think so.
Nah, she wasn't in the last one, I don't think.
Here's the thing, Kody. You
What are
really
you
hate
thinking?
Scrubs, so you just like naturally put Gossip Girl ahead of that.
Right.
I hate National Treasure. That goes to the bottom. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. just sucks. I think maybe this is right below New Girl.
No shot. No, you're really pushing for it. I say we can put it above Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but
Put it high, and then
I don't think it deserves to go any higher than that.
all right, I can compromise.
I mean, it doesn't even have a theme song. That's like the only qualification point we would need, really. So I think it's at least got to be in the bottom tier too, for sure.
We'll put it right above Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Just for
as
you.
the second worst show. Appreciate that, Kody.
Yeah.
Moving on over to our episode breakdown, we'll start with episode 1, The Land of Enchantment. We're doing that, of course, because it is the first episode, the pilot.
So start off with some positives. I do have some positives here and there. I feel like the main premise that I thought the show was coming in was like, oh, it's kind of making fun of like HGTV shows, which I do like that idea, even though I'm not like a massive HGTV guy personally. I think like Nathan Fielder in that environment could be a really funny show. Other than that, I mean, it's a good cast, like I said too. I mean, I love Nathan Fielder, love Emma Stone. Benny Safdie's hit or miss, but I like most of his work. And then in this episode too, you obviously see Emma Stone's parents. The notable one, her dad is Corbin Burnson, who I do enjoy a lot. I mean, the guy was in Major League, which is a heck of a movie. He was in Psych, also playing a dad.
Another First Friday 5 show.
True, yeah, go check out that episode. Definitely a better show and a better theme song for sure. Undoubtedly better theme song. But Corbin Burnson's awesome. So I thought his inclusion was cool. This first episode specifically too, it really focuses on like super cringe kind of scenes and moments, which is a consistent theme. It's a consistent theme throughout Nathan Fielder's career, but in this show specifically, it's a consistent theme as well. Obviously, you have I think it's the opening scene, or maybe it's one of the opening scenes where they're talking about helping this guy out with a job, and they want his mom. Yeah, Fernando. Shout out Fernando, who gets a lot more interesting as we go along. But they want his mom to be like super emotional and just trying to play it up for the cameras and stuff. That's kind of the back and forth with Benny Safdie and specifically Emma Stone in this first episode too, which again, it's really not as prevalent after this first episode. I feel like episode to episode in this series, things change drastically, which I do like. But yeah, it's kind of just like focused on them, like having creative control over the show, and is he kind of pushing the boundaries too far? And then of course the news interview in this episode too. It's kind of just really cringy as well. And I don't know, for me personally, I don't think like that specific plot line is super interesting. Sort of like it may be like the worst blackmail plot line I've ever seen in a TV show. Uh,
Yeah, the
but
casino stuff kind of doesn't really work.
yeah, but I guess what do you think about like the super cringy stuff? Is that something like obviously it's effective, but do you think like it's good because it's super cringy?
I don't think this show is good because it's cringy. And I will admit that this very first episode does the most to play into that kind of shock value cringe humor. I think we can go ahead and say it right off the bat. There's a lot of small penis work that's happening here in this episode, particularly from Nathan Fielder's character of Asher and Corbin Burnson's character playing Emma Stone's dad. There's a ton to unpack and therapize there. And get into about, her, having control in that relationship. And I mean, listen, we get further and further into how he's basically just like a cuck and, in their relationship and in their life. And you talked about how this really is about the power struggle and the power balance between these two people. It's very much about Emma Stone, particularly kind of becoming the green queen as we pass through. But I think the cringe, if you can accept it in this episode, you'll be able to appreciate the greater story that it's trying to tell.
I agree. I think like the first episode, it is maybe the worst of the worst of the cringe throughout the series. I guess I should mention off the top, I did like I was pretty excited for the series when it first came out and it released on kind of an episode weekly basis. And I did check out the first one like pretty early on. And like specifically some of the stuff I mentioned, and then like you mentioned too, like the weird like micro penis stuff, that kind of just like completely turned me off from the entire series. And then Corbin kind of had to drag me back in here, and I actually ended up binging the entire series, which is interesting. But yeah, going back to like the micro penis stuff too, I don't really get why it needs to be in here. I guess it's kind of I guess like they think it's funny, I guess. But kind of just strange using like practical effects and stuff like
It's
that.
character building.
And then you got to bring in Corbin Burnson to do that as well. I think that's unnecessary.
The Cherry Tomato Boys, Cody.
Yeah, true. Yeah, great nickname. But just from like a psychology standpoint, it's kind of like, oh, Emma Stone had, a dad who has a micro penis, so I guess she's gonna be attracted to more guys who have micro penises. I don't know, dude. It's pretty like deep stuff that I don't really want to think about most times. But yeah, I think that's the weirdest of it, and I think that's definitely. I mean, that's what turned me off the show, really, if I'm being honest. So I assume it's probably similar for some other people if they watch this pilot episode and were like, "What the hell am I watching?" Because that was mostly my thoughts.
There was a funny joke in the Q&A where Benny was like, we wanted to do a showing in Espanola of one of the episodes for all the people who were a part of it and helped make it, because they used a lot of local people as actors. And, he's like, but we weren't going to do the first episode, maybe the finale, because, we wanted something a little bit more family friendly. And the first episode is definitely not.
Yeah, I think it's cool too. It goes in between like rated R and just like rated like mature or something. I do like that, like going darker in some episodes and then just a little bit lighter fun in some others. But yeah, this first one, I would say out of all the episodes that we will go over here, it's probably my least favorite, if I'm being completely honest. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I'll say it has a 7.6 on IMDb, so you can pin that for later. Just a couple plot points I wanted to hit going through the episode. It opens on a slow zooming shot of that Fernando character that we talked about. Big guy, ex-convict, as they talk about, covered in tattoos on his face, can't get a job, has this, presentation of you would make assumptions about them based on prejudice. It's very clear that they're opening with this person for a reason. It's a slow zoom from the outside of a house, and that particular camera choice that is done from the very first shot is constant throughout the entire series. Everything is voyeuristic. Everything is constantly being obstructed. It's like somebody's filming them it's like they're being filmed for another reality TV show. It's almost like, in The Office when there's like a documentary crew following them around. There'll be shots of like somebody in a car that'll follow Whitney like down the street and then drive away. Like it's all just very unsure. Even the final shot of this episode is pointed at Asher and he looks into the camera and then the camera like whips down like it's scared of him and it like like they've been caught watching him. Everything is very intrusive. It's interesting. What do you think about the direction throughout?
I do like it a lot, if I'm being honest. I mean, like I said, they are super creative with a lot of their shots. I think every single kind of scene is definitely thought out very well of what they want to do with kind of the camera work, which is cool. And like I said too, I mean, it is kind of sort of like in a mockumentary style of maybe the idea is like Benny Safdie has told, members of the crew, even when, they're offset or even when, they're in between scenes to kind of keep the cameras rolling and keep kind of everything, they would want to see in there. So maybe that's kind of like the theme with it, but I do like it. I mean, all of those kind of like weird cut scenes, like you'd say with The Office, where they're like following people and they don't know, I feel like are sometimes the funniest ones. So it's kind of like trying to stay super realistic in that sense. But I think the camera work is definitely one of the strong points for me for sure, for the show as a whole.
Yeah, and I think they even told some of like the background actors to look into the camera at times to kind of like create that effect of like, hey, maybe this is someone watching them, someone filming them. It just adds to the overall eeriness of it, the surrealness of it. They used a lot of like long lenses to keep everything very narrow and tight with the shots. There's not really a lot of like insert shots, like you won't see them cut to something. A lot of it's just all done in one frame, one shot. And it's very, very well directed. I know Fielder directed a lot of the episodes. Safdie directed some. And then these two brothers, David and Nathan Zellner, I think directed a few episodes as well. So shout out to all of them. Let's talk about this idea of the passive homes. The very first time we really hear them talked about, the line they use is using technology developed right in our backyard in Los Alamos, which I think is funny considering Benny Safdie, of course, in Oppenheimer has spent some time in Los Alamos, and this was really shot in the backyard. Espanola is right there where they did the nuclear testing, and it kind of all just worked out.
Comic.
But they build these passive homes, which obviously have just there's just so many layers to it. There's the art stuff that we deal with in this episode, where Whitney, Emma Stone's character, is kind of pretending that she is an artist in having this and all that. And there's also the environmental aspect that it is so good for the environment. But you will see throughout the run of the series that there are so many problems with these homes, and it is all very performative. Everything about these characters is performative. Going back to the news caster scene that you talked about, the interview that's in your background, I love the use of the G word, Kody, or the lack there use of the G word. Therefore, gentrification. Don't say it. We say the G word. But of course, all the stuff that it's getting to there is about Emma Stone's family history and her parents being slumlords. And then Nathan Fielder's character just loses it and he kind of goes crazy, which is the first time we see one of the two of them kind of really lose their shit. And it's that weird, it's that power thing where he's trying to take control. And then we see this look on Emma Stone's face and it's like, I don't think she's into this at all.
Yeah, like I said, I think that's one of the more cringier scenes altogether. And again, I feel like just in that scene specifically, I don't really buy Nathan Fielder's acting. It's like when he like snaps, like you said, I don't know, like I feel like he's jokingly like saying that and trying to make me laugh.
How would you feel if I kept asking you about that? You're your own person. You're beautiful. Look at me when I'm talking to you.
Yeah, he like when he doesn't get respect too for a second, he like gets like a deeper voice or something too. But yeah, I don't know. All that stuff, like I said, I don't really love. Going back to the passive homes, I think like everything they're saying there, I think is pretty interesting. Obviously, just like environmentalism on HGTV, which we don't see too much, I don't think. And then again, kind of pointing out some of the not so great things about the passive homes as we move along. It being like a thermos straight up, I think it's really funny later on in the series. I low-key like agree with Emma Stone. Like she's low-key an artist, I think. Even though maybe she doesn't go about it the best way, but these homes are pretty cool in their design and everything. So I think out of the three characters that we'll talk about, mostly Emma Stone's is definitely the most likable, even though she definitely has a lot of things about her that is unlikable, specifically her kind of one-sided friendship with Kara, who's a character I'll definitely talk a little bit more about. But I kind of like it. Like I said, like the show, it's saying a lot, and I think most of what it's saying is good things about like indigenous people, passive homes, environmentalism. But I think when it loses its way off that path, it definitely kind of loses me as well.
You have stuff like the scene right before the interview where they open their jeans store in Barrier Coffee, this new little mini mall, this strip mall that they've created in the community to put jobs and whatever. It's bullshit. It's like they're bringing in these like outside capitalistic leeches to set up shop in the community falsely and provide no real service. It's like a shitty drip coffee and a luxury jean store that people just end up stealing from in a later episode. There's the great shot of like the girl trying to get her coffee with the coupon, and she's like, she doesn't speak English, and she's like, "Can I just have a coffee?" And they're just like, "Okay, so we can give you a drip coffee with this, that," and she's just like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" And it's just like this performative thing of like Emma Stone, "Oh, I'm doing so much great stuff for the neighborhood," but in reality, it's all just kind of ancillary, providing nothing. It's all just hipster bullshit.
They're both kind of, and her specifically too, is definitely kind of a leech on this community. I would say she's trying to act like she's a part of it in
Under
a
the
sense.
guise of like lifting it up. It's very
Right.
interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird dichotomy of of like, is this character actually doing something good, or is it kind of just for no reason at all? Obviously, like you said, them kind of making a small community for the TV show, I think is definitely portrayed to be not a good thing. But I think some of the other stuff that she at least attempts to do is in good vein, but usually kind of in the wrong at the end all be all of things. But yeah, I think like the HGTV part of this show is kind of the thing that I've been thinking about most since watching it, which I think that's what this show is trying to do 100% is trying to make you think. So for me, that is definitely my favorite part.
It covers so many topics, and maybe it doesn't have the chance to fully focus or flesh out every single one of them, but it does make you think about some of the stuff. I think at the end of the day, Whitney is a person who doesn't have good intentions, but she wants to ensure that she makes everybody think she has good intentions at all times, almost to the point of like cosplaying her way into having actual good intentions. It's so psychotic how much she dives deep into this false like I gotta leave the shadow of my parents. It's also like very similar in this way. She's got this like adoptive performative Judaism thing going on where like she's converted to the religion obviously that Asher is a part of, but she kind of just uses it again as like a badge or as a way to like as a white woman to have something to be persecuted about.
I think that's really hit out in this first episode too. Is kind of her relationship with Judaism because they're obviously going through some sort of ritual and stuff. Like you said, I think she's definitely trying to separate herself from her parents here. And something really interesting that I was thinking of the other day too, basically with her family. This is later on in the series, I guess, but whatever. But she's like searching her own name on Google, and when she searches her last name with Nathan Fielder's last name, whatever it is, I can't remember, it like pops up with all the HGTV stuff. But then when she searches her name with her maiden name, it's like all of this slumlord stuff. So I think maybe like she just was maybe super easy to get into marriage just because she wanted to get rid of her maiden name. And like she was kind of willing to do anything. She's like, okay, cool, I'll convert to Judaism. I don't really care as long as my last name is kind of changed on the internet. So there's a lot of deeper stuff with her character for sure, talking about her parents. But I think deep down, like I mean, out of these three, she's definitely the best person, the best
I don't think
character.
no.
I think easily.
I
I
think
don't
that's
even think it's
wrong, Cody.
close.
I think she's like massively the
Who's
ultimate
better?
villain of
Who's
the
a better
show.
person? It's definitely
Benny,
not Nathan
dude.
Fielder.
Dougie.
Okay. Well, I say we hop into the next episode because we get a
Well,
lot more
no. We
backstory.
got to talk about a very pivotal thing that happens in this one.
What
Cody.
else happens? I've
The
go
fucking
for it.
curse, Cody.
Oh, is that yeah? That's all right.
The titular curse, of course, occurs in episode 1. You were 100% right in your intro earlier where you're talking about this happened to Nathan Fielder. A woman asked him for money. She cursed them. He then went and got $20 from an ATM, showed back up, gave her the money, and was like, So am I not cursed anymore? And she was like, nope, you're not anymore. He told this story to Benny Safdie, and then Benny Safdie was like, well, what if she wasn't there? What if she disappeared? Which is where this show comes from. That does happen in this. There's a little girl. She's selling Sprite minis kind of as a setup to try and get Asher and Whitney to keep their microphones on and record them later. He has him do this thing where he like gives the little girl money, blah, 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 blah. He gives the girl money, he gives her $100 bill, and then promptly takes it back because he doesn't, like want to give her $100. The girl then curses him, which really sets forth the events of the series, maybe depending on if you believe in the, the reality of the curse. There's a lot of unfortunate things that seem to happen to these characters, but it's a thing also of like, if somebody says that to you, you can really attribute all of the bad things that are happening in a certain sort of way to this curse. I want to shout out that the dad of the little girl, Barkat Apti, Oscar nominated I'm the Captain Now of Captain Phillips.
Yeah.
Playing Abshir in this, which I think is just brilliant casting. There's a lot of really fun character acting, extra casting that they do throughout the series.
Is that look at me, I'm the captain now. Great actor. I wish he was in more stuff, honestly, but it was definitely a good surprise seeing him on there. I think the two child actors were actually pretty good too. Obviously, the main girl who's doing the cursing, which we'll definitely talk a lot more about her. But yeah, this curse setup I think is good. Like you said too, I feel like it is definitely used as a scapegoat for kind of some of the bad things that happens down the line here for all the characters. And it has a cool kind of callback later on with Benny Safdie's character directly. But I don't know, it didn't like hook me or anything like that. It's just some little girl saying, she's cursing, Nathan Fielder for not giving her money, which is fair. It also turns out it was also like a TikTok trend that she was just doing, which I think is a really fun kind of commentary on that too, of especially the younger generation and where they kind of pick up things. So I thought that was a fun spin on it. When that happened, I was like, oh, maybe I'll like the show, but let it a little bit better. And then a bunch of other crap happened. But yeah, I think a pilot as a whole, that was an all right scene, but not one of my favorites.
And then at the end of this episode, Kody, they're unpacking all their food from their meal kit, and their chicken penne doesn't have the chicken. Now, we don't know what that means now, but maybe in a later episode, we'll find that the chicken was cursed.
Yeah, there's a massive thing with chicken as a running theme, which I do think is actually really funny, if I'm being honest. Like, he's definitely
the chicken in the bathroom. We don't see that in these 5, but that's great.
Yeah, he's definitely afraid of chicken. Basically, every time he sees chicken or chicken is ordered, he's like really scared by it. But yeah, it kind of opens up a lot of questions, because obviously when they reconvene with this girl down the road, she kind of informs them that was the curse in her head, that she was removing their chicken, which again is pretty random and doesn't really make any sense. But I definitely have my thoughts. I don't know, we don't have to go in right now, but I think low-key this girl's little telepathic psychic stuff going here. I don't know what's going on, but I think there's something going on. So I think that's pretty cool.
If you believe in something, then you give it power. I'll say that. The last note from this episode is Dougie, the director, highlights his burn victim show, which then there proves that maybe you're right. They are all terrible people.
Most people say that real beauty is on the inside, but do they actually believe it? This show puts that claim to the test, as 15 single women vie for the heart of one man whose face will be concealed the entire time. I can tell you right now, he will fall in love, and one of these women will fall for him too. Only once the couple are legally wed in an official ceremony will she see his face for the first time. The women were told he could be anybody, a celebrity, a tycoon, a prince, perhaps. But in reality, he is the survivor of a horrific apartment fire. Will these women stand by their belief that beauty is on the inside?
But the fire burns on, the fire.
Or will his physical appearance be too much to handle? I'm your host, Dan Cortez. Join me for this once-in-a-lifetime chance at love for a man who desperately doesn't want to be taken at face value. Find out what happens this season on Love to the Third Degree.
But the fire burns on, the fire burns on, the fire burns
even Asher and Whitney are appalled by this idea of like doing a stuck-up dating show. The Dougie character is very interesting. He's very performative. Everything about his external looks is to draw attention. He's got the long hair and the painted nails and the douchiest rings possible and crazy, white boots and flannel shirts, and he looks like he hasn't showered. And he's just kind of a leech. He's a leech, but he's representative of real like reality TV type directors.
I think he reminds me a lot of just like typical studio guys that you'd have to run into. Like, this is the guy giving you notes on like the stupid stuff to do while you're trying to make a TV show. And he has like a pre-existing relationship with Nathan Fielder's character too, which is kind of strange throughout. I feel like they're not really friends, but obviously the entire premise is like Nathan Fielder pulling him in to helping him out with the show. And then, yeah, obviously in this episode, it's really showing off his character. I think a lot of, what he values and what he think the show will kind of be good. So I think that's all right. But yeah, I don't think by any means of the word is saying that this character is a good person. I think it's completely the opposite overall for all three of these, really. But I really dislike him the most, I think.
In the second episode, which we'll move on over to, Pressure's Looking Good So Far, which is the lowest rated episode at a 7.4, so not too low. It's actually tied for Under the Big Tree as well, with a 7.4, but that has less total ratings than this one.
I'm surprised. I probably would have picked Under the Big Tree just because they do a really strange opening that I feel like really drags on. But kind of just jumping straight into this episode.
We learn more about Dougie. I think.
Yeah, that's what I want to talk about. Yeah, so we get a lot more of Dougie's kind of backstory, which it's a cool way we kind of see that as just like him on this like first date, it seems like, and kind of just talking about himself, and then the conversation ends up kind of what happened in his life that has really affected him. So basically, he had a wife. Basically, he was driving intoxicated under some influences, and unfortunately, he got T-boned, and his wife ended up dying. So that kind of holds a really massive cloud over his head, as you would think. But yeah, I would probably use that as clear evidence that he's not a great guy, and mostly because on this date as well, he ends up driving his date home, and he's got this little breathalyzer in his glove compartment.
He waits till he's like
halfway there
on the drive.
Yeah, and he's like, "Oh, pull out the breathalyzer. I just want to, put you at ease, and make sure I'm all right." And of course, he's over the limit. So I mean, just that fact alone, and he constantly does it throughout the series too. He continuously like still drives under the influence, even though, I mean, you would think this would be a traumatic moment in his life where that might change things after. He does have excuses of like, oh, the crash wasn't his fault, which could be fair. I wasn't there. I don't know. This is a made up character, and I assume that's not correct. But yeah, just not a great guy overall. But some good character development there at least, and some cool introductions through that. But overall, it just makes him not very likable, I think.
It makes you just think. It's in this moment, he says, I was driving drunk. I've accepted that, but I was cleared legally. Like, he's still allowed to drive. He still has his license. He's not in jail. He wasn't at fault. It was a T-bone. But then his date looks at him and is like, do you think if you weren't drinking, you would have seen that car coming? And he's like, man, it's a fair question. I actually do think about that a lot. It kind of all I think about. And then you get a little bit of look into this guy. It's like, okay, he's constantly haunted by this. But at the same time, he uses it as, again, a kind of shield, throughout. He'll mention, oh, well, my wife's dead, or my, like I have a dead wife, or, my wife was killed in this accident, while continuing to still drive drunk, as we see, which, just supports that he's not a great guy.
Yeah, facts. And then other thing in this episode, like we'd said before, I mean, a massive kind of plot point in here is Nathan Fielder breaking into the casino this episode.
A little Ocean's 11 action.
Yeah, Ocean's 1 action. Also, before that, though, too, we do find out that Emma Stone,
the very first shot,
is Prego. Yeah, I thought that was cool camera work. What do you think about kind of that opening shot?
Yeah, you basically like a macro lens on a pregnancy test being filled with urine, and then revealing that she is in fact pregnant, which is fun camera work for sure. I guess that is an insert shot to start the show at the very least. But This episode being the lowest rated, if we want to talk about, I think it's for a few reasons. One is the drunk driving, point A. That's not like, just kind of think people in general are kind of like, I don't like this. I don't like the way it's kind of being presented. I don't like Dougie's character. Point two is that the casino is just not very good. And then point three, everything that happens with Whitney and her pregnancy. Just because it's kind of an unfortunate end. Let's talk about the casino and the Ocean's One, as you call it, Kody. He obviously goes to the casino for the first time, trying to kind of, make his way of things, do his Nathan Fielder magic. Doesn't work. Second time he comes back around, though, he does. And this really is Nathan Fielder cooking. Breaks out the red Gatorade as he's showing him a funny video. Hey, I got to show you a funny video. Breaks out the red Gatorade and just spills it all over the place.
Well, it's a weird setup as well because he's obviously like really trying to just get in their office, and he's come up with like 5 different things he's tried, and then lastly, as they're like walking out, he just like stops and is acting like really sad or something, and then out of the blue he's like, "Oh, by the way, Whitney's pregnant," and then him and this guy named Bill, who it seems like were pretty good buddies when he was working at the casino. He kind of uses that emotional attachment to get him involved. And then randomly after that, he's like, "Oh, I have this really funny internet video I want to show you." And it ends up just being
He's like, show me on your phone. And he's like,
he's like,
no, my phone's dead. Well, it's not dead, but I need its battery for later. It's almost dead.
yeah. And then it just ends up being the video of the classic news reporter one
Clip
where
of the week.
Go ahead and keep on the run. Sorry to have kept you, but I appreciate you guys talking with us. All right, thanks. We've seen a lot of people out here, like you said, running, sledding, just enjoying it. One thing, oops, that can happen, unfortunately. Looks like Chelsea's okay. You okay?
yeah, it's snowing really badly and there's runners outside and they interview her and she's like, "Oh, this is prime running conditions." And then they pan away for 2 seconds and then she like slips in the background, which is not even really the funniest internet video you could have picked. You could have gone, "I like turtles." You could have gone any direction really, and it probably would
Something
have
with
better.
cats.
Yeah, but then of course, like you said, he opens up like this red Gatorade bottle, puts it right next to his friend, and then right when like the
Open.
yeah, right when the quote unquote funny parts happen, he like busts out laughing super loud and smacks the can all over his buddy. Which again, I mean, the plan I guess works here.
Well, then that's not even good
That's not
enough.
even all of it. Well, then after that, it didn't make that big of a mess where he had to go get like paper towels or something immediately. So he's like, "Oh, whatever." He grabs the rest of it, just like pours it. Well, he pours it on his buddy first, and the guy's like, "What the fuck?" And then he just starts pouring out on the top of his head, and it gets everywhere, which is a lot of fun. Again, with this, I just don't think it's like believable. If I'm being completely
Nathan
honest.
Fielder is just such a charming, goofy weirdo, man.
And he does turn it on it to make it like somewhat believable because at the beginning of the episode with Bill like rips a fart on him really comedically. So then at the end it's like, "Oh, that was payback for the fart," or whatever, and they kind of bond a little bit over that still. So he kind of still had Bill on his
boys.
side. Yeah, even after, making a mess of his office and everything. But yeah, not my specific like favorite sequence, but at least a little bit more of like comedy. It's more of physical comedy, which I don't think this show has a ton of. So I guess it's pandering to me a little bit, but it's still not kind of my favorite just because of the acting.
Overall, it's a pretty dumb scene, but it does have 2 great moments. One, just first of all, the idea that Nathan Fielder uses to get in is that he's pitching basically like a Chuck E. Cheese inside of the casino, which
Yeah.
yes, that's a brilliant idea, but it's a brilliantly awful idea and like would be terribly illegal and like it's just gross. But it's like, again, it plays into like this is kind of the sick, twisted thing. Again, you hear Asher has all these ideas about circadian rhythms and using daylights and blah blah blah. And then there's another moment where Asher's laughing at like this awful Native American casino cartoon about how like it only took us 400 years to figure out how to beat the white man using casinos, that they clearly just have up as like the satirical, making fun of it, not like as like, oh, we think this is hilarious, but then Asher stands there and is like, "Oh wow, I've always loved this one. It's so funny." And it's just like, oh my God, you're laughing
Yeah.
for the wrong reason.
Just so on like self-aware, which is
Yeah.
just so painful to watch. But I think that is the point of the show. Obviously, that's what they're trying to make you feel. But yeah, that specific kind of cartoon snippet definitely stood out to me as well. It's like, I don't know, like this guy is it's just so unlikable. I don't know if I can watch the rest of the show.
There's a lot of indigenous stuff in this episode. So first of all, we see Whitney meeting with the governor of the San Pedro Pueblo. Shout out to the governor, and basically kind of is on the side of the road. And it's this very performative thing where like her assistant takes their picture, and then Whitney's like, "Oh, no pictures, no pictures." And he's like, "Oh, well, you can take a picture." And he's like, "Oh, you want a picture? Sure, we can take a picture together. I'll send it to you." And it's just like everything she's doing. Again, she's meeting with this guy where it's like it feels like it has good intentions because she wants to hear his thoughts and feelings, but really it's like she mentions like, some of these title companies aren't giving people insurance for their new homes, which becomes an issue later in the series. So it's like she constantly has ulterior motives in every interaction. And then she invites this governor to the art show of her friend Kara that evening, which do you want to talk about the art show a little bit, Cody?
Yeah, so this probably was my favorite part of the episode was the art show. And I think Kara is definitely an underutilized character here. We don't hear a ton from her specifically, but her and Whitney definitely have kind of this. It's almost like a one-sided friendship. I feel like where Emma Stone kind of actively is public about like how she's good friends with Kara, and she really like loves all of her work, and basically her art is kind of just surrounding around kind of like hateful or stereotypical kind of art out there put out by other people, and then she goes and steals it from them and then kind of puts on a
She's got
display.
some
Just
MLB art.
yeah, she does, just to show kind of how ignorant and embarrassing this is, which I kind of like that. And I do want to hear your thoughts too. She has one specific segment where it's performance based,
Mm.
and it's kind of strange, but she's just hanging out in a teepee basically, and then you go in and sit down, and she's got turkey ready to serve. She's actually slicing it herself, and then she hands some turkey to you on a plate. And if you eat the turkey, which pretty much everybody did in the exhibit, then she just starts screaming and says like, "Why did you do that?" Which I think for an art exhibit, like that would make me think a lot of like, what is this trying to say? So I like that. But what do you think about it?
I mean, the thing is, I think the point of it is that it's like the most obvious metaphor possible.
Yeah,
Kara
yeah.
is not supposed to be like some incredible artist. She's kind of a joke in herself. At the end of this, she's in the New York Times because she quit art, right? Like everybody's a joke in the show, right? Kara included. And it's just highlighting here how like oblivious Whitney is to everything. And in this moment, she like freaks out so much. And I love her popping out and like, I don't think you're supposed to eat the turkey like to the governor before he goes in. And then when he goes in, he just like sits there and stares at her and he's like, okay, and then gets out. I do love the scene as a whole. I think it's probably one of the parts of this episode that works the best. And you obviously have the dynamic between these two of Karen Whitney, because Whitney sees herself as an artist. And I know you've alluded to her being an artist, but like she is ripping off this like real like life artist, Doug Aiken, this guy who like has made mirrored homes. It's a concept that the show took from him, where he's, mirroring, creating these reflective homes. And she's just kind of just, again, she's like, nothing she does is original. And she's not an artist. They talked about, I just want to say like these mirrored homes and the creation of the show, the way they built them, because this isn't CGI, these are practical things, is they just took houses and then they built facades. They just put like around the outside a big mirrored walls. But then they said, near the end of filming, there was like burn marks in the grass from the path of the sun reflecting off of all the mirrors. So then even, like realistically, again, like these homes would just like not work. There's a scene in this episode where a bird strikes it and dies because they're just so obtrusive and not natural to the community or anybody there.
Like I said, I like the idea of the environmental side of things, although I don't really love the mirror aspect of it. I guess I think that's a little overboard. It's an interesting take of like, is this even right for kind of the community, even as like climate? Like I feel like maybe if you did it like in a different climate than obviously Espanola, maybe it would make a little bit more sense. But just with like the wildlife, and I mean, it's a ton of birds, obviously, you can have a ton of deaths just from that alone. One of my main things that I dislike about the series is like, who am I supposed to like in this show? And I know the answer is nobody pretty much, but I don't think that like makes a compelling show almost. It makes me not want to watch it. But like you said, I mean, Whitney was my favorite character just from like a moral standpoint. And you're pointing out all the flaws in her kind of logic constantly. So every character in this series, I don't think I like, which sucks.
And then, of course, at the end of the episode, we find out that Whitney has had a miscarriage. This child that we, are excited about at the beginning. Asher's so excited about his reaction. Baby, 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 what's going on? Is not going to happen, which is very sad and shocking. I think when you combine all those things together, it's the reason this is the lowest rated episode. Because just no one wants that. And especially like when you start thinking, it's like, is that what the curse was? Like, did that happen? And it just leads you down a path of ill will that
Yeah.
you don't really want to get into.
Definitely just a downer way to end the episode, especially since they opened up the episode in kind of a more like positive, optimistic way of kind of these two characters interacting. But I'm sure everyone like I can relate to that. I know people who have kind of gone through that, and I don't think they're not really even saying anything about that in a sense. I think they could have maybe taken a step further and maybe be a bit bolder and try and say something more, but I think it's just kind of basic etiquette for that situation in a sense, which is understandable, but for a weird and crazy show like this, I feel like maybe this episode is saying the least out of all of them while being a downer at the same time, which kind of sucks.
Let's move on over to episode 8, Down and Dirty, which was my pick because, of course, this was my pick for a TV show. I wanted to go with this episode particularly for one Emma Stone scene, which I think is just really good, and I wanted to talk about, but we'll save it. First of all, this episode opens with a little interlude of the teens coming in and stealing from the store, which of course is happening because Whitney's just been like, oh, well, we don't need to like arrest anybody. Or again, it's the thing where it's like, well, she kind of has positive intentions, really more so. She just like doesn't want the trouble or like the attention of bad things happening. So she just tells her worker at the jean store, oh, if anybody steals anything, just charge my credit card. Money doesn't matter to me. I'm, a trust fund baby. I've got rich slumlord parents. But this opens with, these teens, these like, rich white kids coming in and just like taking like 15 pairs of jeans and leaving, which is crazy. And that obviously pisses off our boy Fernando.
Yeah, true. Fernando's got a lot of issues, but I kind of like this opening low key, just because I mean, this is a pretty tight cast. We don't really hear a ton of things other than from kind of the main three, I feel like overall. And for this episode to kind of open up with completely new characters, kind of just hanging out, driving through Espanola. I kind of liked a little bit of the world building that they did there and kind of showing more of like the community's perspective, which I kind of would have liked to see more. And even like that small interaction between like the one kid and the girl who works there. I thought maybe that was even more interesting than some stuff in other episodes. But I do like that too.
He
Like,
likes thick girls, Cody.
yeah, like see, there's just like funny, throwaway lines in there that I like. Them just being like, "Oh, is this like a promo or something where you can just take jeans?" She's like, "No, like this rich girl, just give me your credit card, basically." So let me just know how many you have. Like, is that like 10 pairs or is that 9 pairs? Like, let me know. I thought all of that kind of like detail stuff was pretty funny.
Yeah, I think it is a really good opening. And it's kind of the thing is like each episode kind of progresses in time a little bit. And this is just another jump forward of like we've got to the point where it's spread. The word is spread. Everybody can come far and wide and enter this community and steal jeans, which then of course causes Fernando to show up at their house with a gun, yelling at them. I thought you guys were going to clean this shit up. It's a cancer. You've brought this shit. And then Asher kind of like, is stepping up towards him, standing up, trying to act like all tough. And Whitney really is just kind of rolling her eyes the whole time, laughing at him. And then we get the great scene of her kind of just going after Asher and losing her mind.
But what about Fernando? I mean, we promised him a job,
God,
right?
I'm not thinking about that right now.
But his mom and everything.
His mom. Oh, Ashley. Oh, you're so sweet. Oh, wow. Nice to meet you. Who's this? Who's this? You care about people so much. You're such an angel. Good. You better quit it, mister. There'll be consequences. Oh!
I'll roll the clip there.
Second
But
clip of the week.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Emma Stone for me was definitely really, really great in this episode. Like you said, obviously the whole interaction with Fernando is again another kind of cringe comedy scene I feel like they're going for. But I don't know, I feel like his inclusion, he's definitely underutilized as well. But his inclusion in this episode is like showing up for 5 minutes, just telling them that they both are idiots basically and need to get out. And then Nathan Fielder like trying to step up and be like, hey, you can't talk to me like that. But then actually just like showing his true colors of course being a pushover that we know that he is. So yeah, I think overall for Fernando, he deserved better, I think. But this was a cool moment for him, at least to kind of stand up to them.
Showing up with the rifle. I like it.
Yeah, he also came strapped with a couple of his boys. So he knew what was going to
Who are
happen.
these guys? They're my fucking brothers.
Yeah, he's carrying it all times, man. Fernando is prepared for anything. So shout out to him.
The rest of the episode then is basically Dougie and Asher hanging out, starting with them doing a lot of kind of cutaways, one-on-one interviews, and Whitney going off to kind of like an art dealer, rich guy's house to film something, but also hang out with Kara. Let's talk about the Dougie and Asher thing. Dougie asks him, "What would your real life be like without Whitney?" There's a really interesting line where he's like, like in an upside down, like alternate crazy world. Maybe put a pin in that upside down alternate crazy world for later. What would happen? And his response is, I'd have nothing. And then there's a really interesting shot where like the camera dollies to the right and it reveals the monitor of the in-scene camera that then pans down to Asher's crotch that he's hiding, where he may or may not have a boner, I think is what it's trying to signify there. And then it continues to go on. Dougie like interrogates him about how you ask your wife to basically cuck you. And then, Asher reacts terribly, of course, to that. And Dougie's like, oh, I'm just joking, guys. But then weirdly, Asher kind of like respects this move and takes him out to dinner. And it's like, I'm sorry, I haven't been a good enough friend.
Yeah, again, like a lot of character movements up there. I don't find too much of it to be particularly interesting, if I'm being honest. I mean, going back, I guess, a little bit to like him and Emma Stone's conversation a little bit, which definitely bleeds over into that interviewing scene. But I feel like Nathan Fielder, he's a bad guy, but he's like pretending to be a good guy just because he's trying to be more like Whitney in a sense, which I think gives his character like depth, but I don't think that necessarily makes it like good, like character depth. And then, like you said, I mean, his relationship with Benny Safdie's character is kind of all over the place, especially with like when they're on set. It's like Benny Safdie like hates this guy and kind of wants to do everything he can to make him look bad. I think maybe even if it's not like saying like he's having a boner, it's just like his hands like really like tensed up and like he's thinking about like, oh, what would I ever do if I lost, Whitney? It's like, dude, like this guy's such a loser. Like I don't know who would ever want to, get into
nothing.
it. Yeah, exactly. Which, yeah, like you said, fast forward to last episode, we'll definitely have to talk about that. But yeah, I don't know. I think the first half of this episode or so, I guess the first couple scenes, I don't really like too much. But once we get to like dinner, I think it does get a little bit better. Obviously, Benny Safdie plays another joke on him by just ordering chicken straight up.
Just a chicken, like a roast chicken.
Which I did like that. I think it's really funny. Like this guy is just straight up just scared of chicken. Like somebody could just accidentally bring that to his table and he'd start freaking out. So I like that a lot. And then they do have like an interesting conversation, like you said too, about kind of how they were friends and kind of how they've drifted apart, even though he's come back and helped them on this TV show, which I thought was a cool conversation. And then after that, it just turns into pure madness. But in between, there's definitely a scene I wanted to talk about. Well, I guess too, it's the same BS where Benny Safdie is, still not a very good person. Obviously, when they're about to leave the restaurant, he's trying to get
drinking.
Yeah, he's also trying to get Nathan Fielder really drunk. He orders him like shots and multiple drinks, and then obviously too, he like sneakily orders a rum and coke in like a takeaway cup, which is just, I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know how I'm supposed to like any of these characters
Can you
specifically.
give me a rum and coke, but put it in the cup that you put the regular Coke in and don't tell anyone.
Yeah, just like the scum of the earth, I feel like, in a sense, but he does pass the breathalyzer this time in the car.
0.078 is his breathalyzer. And if you don't know, 0.08 is the legal limit.
So again, I feel like that was probably similar limit to where he's at with his wife. So, technically legal, but still a really bad guy. But the one scene I wanted to talk about with that was you get a great fun like rapping scene with Nathan Fielder, which honestly was probably my favorite part of the entire episode. But did you like that scene? I feel like that's definitely hit or miss as well for Fielder comedy.
I mean, it's the thing. It's very particular. They're rapping "Hell Yeah" by Dead Prez, like this early 2000s, like intense gangster rap song. It's all just like performative. And they're sitting there, my inward this, my inward that. Like it's just so ridiculous. There's a lot of maybe clip of the week number 4, them rapping along to that. But
come on, in the living room on the floor, hunger pain got me on some migraine shit. I'm maintained, and we're got $2 or $3 to the name, but the homeless are the same boat, going through the same thing, looking for a caper. We've been living in the dark since April. Candle, got it with a handle. Try about it, mad because of gamble. Boom, boom, go to the yellow page. I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna get paid. Yeah. Take my try out, gonna stick a 25 up in his face. Let's ride. Outside like warriors into notorious Southside. Looking to the 4 of us in the corridor till we see the beam of his headlights. White boy in the wrong place at the right time. This car door opens, he'll be mine. Roll up quick, stick the pistol to his nose. By the look on the face, he's probably shitting in his clothes. You know what it is? It's a stick up. Give me the dough from the pickup. You better it's the wrong inward. Drive drops into rocks of boxes, and we split up and meet back at the apartment. Hell yeah! Are you hungry, my N-word? Hell yeah! Wanna get paid, my N-word? Hell yeah! Aren't you tired of starving, my N-word? Hell yeah!
it's a funny moment. But again, it's just characterization of how ridiculous this guy is and how ridiculous he constantly looks. They of course then go to the house of Abshir and the little girls. I want to say the two actresses, they're good child actors, Kody. Shout out to them. Throwing out curses and whatnot. But this is, I don't like this scene where it's like Benny Safdie's like trying to get cursed by the girl, and it's all very drawn out. Again, it's the cringe comedy thing. You're like, just please get out of the scene. But overall, it doesn't work. And then they don't even get cursed. The chicken's still there when they come back out. He takes Nathan Fielder home, and then he curses Nathan Fielder, which I think is interesting.
So obviously their excuse is like, well, it's not an excuse. They were there to change the smoke detectors, and they're like, "Hey, let's just change them all." Benny Safdie comes up with this brilliant plan to try and get Nala, I believe is the curse girl's name, to try and curse him specifically to see if the chicken will disappear again. Kind of, prove altogether that this is real psychic abilities. But it goes terribly long, and she won't curse him, which is understandable because her dad's super against it. And then he just starts like breaking down, like crying in front of her, which, like you said, is just like extreme cringe. Like this entire show is cringe, but that is just like, I don't ever want to watch that again. It's just so uncomfortable. So then, like you said, Benny Safdie curses Nathan Fielder's character, which I don't know. I think down the road we'll talk about it in a couple episodes, obviously, but I don't know why Benny Safdie. The thing is with the relationship, it's like, does this guy want to be friends with Nathan Fielder? Because he cursed him and he acts like he hates him every day in public and on set, and he's trying to embarrass him. But then, like at the very end, he has an obviously interesting reaction, which we'll get to. But he's also like acting like his friend at the same time. So it's sort of like this duality of this guy. He's just an asshole and still kind of stringing this guy along, maybe to trying to embarrass him even more in public.
I think he likes having Asher around to kind of, be the butt of the jokes, I would say.
Yeah. And then I wanted to talk about Whitney's kind of side of this episode too. Again, somewhat more uncomfortable stuff where she's hanging out with Kara and she got the smaller camera going without much audio, but then they end up being in this a quiet place, and they can actually have this conversation that they can capture on this one. And it's her like trying to force her to promote her art on their show.
She makes her do like the one thing that no artist wants to do, which is like she brings up the teepee and the turkey performance and is like,
right,
explain what that means. Tell me. And then like the explanation is funny because in her explaining it, she is doing what the explanation is, where she's like, every day as a native person, I have to give pieces of myself away constantly. And you can choose whether or not you want to eat it and consume, what consume a part of me. And in this case, I'm now telling you what that means, and I'm giving away a part of me, which just like Kara feels awful about. And then like on top of that, she's kind of like forced into repeating back to her this like line about how like Whitney's a great artist and all this stuff, which just like kills her soul.
I think maybe this was a turning point for her too, where she's like, if I kind of say this stuff, maybe I don't really want to be in this field anymore, which I think is cool. But I really liked like just Kara as a character altogether, and I wish we did get more of like her perspective on things and what she was thinking the entire time. But I think that scene we saw a little bit more kind of a glimpse of where she's coming from a lot and kind of her overall relationship and what she thinks about Emma Stone, which I thought was interesting.
The rest of the art show, there's some interesting moments. It's obviously being like hosted by a military contractor, which is just a funny thing. I mean, rich guys, if you dig deep on anybody, there's something bad about all these people is the line that's fed to Emma Stone. And it's like, well, same thing with Whitney. You dig and look, her parents are slumlords. And then there's this weird white guy in a turban who's like flirting with Whitney and following around and talking to her about elevators. And he's like, we should go check out the elevator. And then they go in and she walks out and she's like, that was just a bathroom, not an elevator.
Yeah, it's kind of left a little bit open to interpretation too. Do you think like they were like fooling around in there, or what
He was
going
trying
on?
to.
She was
Rape.
flirting back.
What? Sorry, grape.
Tough. This was an okay episode, I guess. I feel like this is an interesting pick for you, just for the one you wanted to talk about, because there's definitely some other episodes that I think had some weirder stuff, but I think this obviously leads into talking a lot easier about the next two episodes too. So I'm a fan of the pick.
Yeah, it's good to just create a little bit of cohesion in our final three here. Also pretty highly rated, 8.1. We'll move over to the top rated. It's actually the second highest rated behind the finale. Episode 9, Young Hearts, with an 8.8 on IMDb. This one starts really interesting, like I said. POV of somebody in a car. They're kind of watching as Emma Stone walks out from her house and walks down the street. The car leaves and follows her down the street and then passes her, and we see it kind of driving through the neighborhood until they get to the strip mall.
And their like opening conversation here is it's kind of interesting. Obviously, Nathan Fielder's kind of in a mood, I guess, and then she's asking Nathan if he wants to go bowling, and she does like this countdown method where she's like, if you don't say anything by the time I stop counting down from 10, we can't go bowling. And then that goes on for some time, and then he's like, oh, can I say I want to go bowling now? And then she's like, okay, I'll start the countdown again. And then like halfway through that, he like turns to her and is like, hey, do you love me? And then he starts doing the countdown, back against
And
her.
she will not say it.
Yeah, and she doesn't say it the entire time, which is super uncomfortable and pretty telling, obviously. But then they end up going bowling. And I'll tell you what, Korbin, this by far was my favorite scene in the entire series. So it makes sense. I think this is I guess, like I said, it's the second highest rated episode. For me, this bowling scene was a 10 out of 10. I mean, it's just classic rom-com stuff. Nathan Fielder, I guess he's good at bowling too. He's got his little bowling glove going on. Him and Bill were talking about it earlier that they were going bowling. But it's just like taking this premise to about as simple as possible. Kind of just taking it to like a rom-com, a fun date scene where there's good music over the top of it. So I really enjoyed this scene overall, if I'm being honest.
It is interesting because right before Whitney decides to go on this date with Asher, they meet the show producer for HGTV. She's there kind of around. She tells Dougie off screen, and then Dougie tells Whitney that the breakup direction is not an option for the show, which then like kind of Whitney Sprout, she's like, well, you said whatever happens in real life would be okay. And he's like, well, apparently that's not true. The network's made it very clear we need you and Asher, which of course, like the whole reason she, ever married Asher was to use him. And now she's like stuck continuing to have to use him. And I guess the bullying is, like her trying to maybe build somewhat of a connection back with him, see if she can make things work. She seems to be having a good time bowling, but then when Bill confronts Asher and he kind of, gives it to him, I was the whistleblower at the casino, I am a tool because tools fix things. Whitney is just like not interested, not impressed whatsoever. And then of course they get home later and Asher's jerking off, kind of like reliving the experience of telling Bill off, but then imagining he asks Bill to fuck Whitney.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on top there. But yeah, it's again just like a super uncomfortable scene where he has like the bathroom door like halfway closed and he's like you said, just whacking off in there, talking
Maybe
about
wants
how
to be heard.
probably, I mean, it makes sense for his character, but he's obviously talking about, oh, Bill, you know, fuck my wife, Bill, fuck her while I'm standing over here. It's just like, dude, I don't really want to, spend my time watching this happen. But yeah, that's kind of the extreme cringe there, where I think the show absolutely kind of loses me for sure.
They have dinner with the HGTV lady. There's this funny bit where she like talks about, oh, I love the holistic. And then Emma Stone's like, yes, holistic. We want to include everything. And she's like, maybe holistic wasn't the right word. And then they pitch the Green Queen name, which she loves. And then she's like, and you know what? Every queen needs her jester. And of course, that's Asher as the jester to the Green Queen. And Whitney is close to entering her final form as the true Green Queen. She visits her parents in this episode as well. We get to see the slums that they are lords over. And they accuse her of playing dress up as a Jew, which I think is a great scene where they're kind of pointing to her Star of David necklace that she wears. And there's a little bit of more of that coming in the finale as well.
I really love too where they're talking to the HGTV lady, and she calls Nathan Fielder the jester. I think so easily there it could have been, oh, the Green Queen and the Green King. But like they've seen the footage of the show, they know kind of who this guy is already. And I like that he doesn't even push back against that at all, too. He doesn't even kind of think himself as an equal to Whitney in this show. So I like that parallel. And then, like I said too, I mean, Emma Stone, she's kind of, I thought this episode specifically, she was really great. Just because obviously you have the scene with the whole cuck masturbating, and she's obviously got a ton of stuff to do there, kind of just mentally with that character and kind of to try and push through that. Like you said, maybe a marriage that she kind of went into, just for her own personal reasons. And then she has to deal with, again, this micro penis cuck, which is, I'm sure, a lot of fun. And then I think almost as a way of escaping a little bit, that she goes and visits her parents, which is a world that she does know. We even see some more kind of pictures of her past, a little bit of, she was involved heavily, it seems like, with this slumlord sort of setup for a decent amount of time, and then maybe saw how things were going and tried to get out, obviously, but she was a part of the society for sure. And then when she gets there, it's just like there's nobody in her life who she can kind of go to, it seems like, just for any sort of levity. I mean, her parents are complete dicks, obviously, like we've been saying. Slumlords, she's just surrounded by imbeciles. She's got an idiot husband. Honestly, even like this town of Espanola kind of sucks ass, if we're being completely honest.
Well, and then she goes, the next scene after she visits her parents, she goes and visits a masseuse. And she's just, she's trying to give a massage. And nope, it's Kara that is there to give the massage, which she then like decides to cancel and leaves a tip of $350, which is insane. Kody, you show up. Do you have Kara give the massage, or what's going on? What's proper protocol there?
I don't know. That is ridiculously awkward. I probably would not have her give me a massage. I'd probably be like, hey, let's get one of the other goobers who work here to do it. I probably wouldn't just leave. But I guess if that was the decision between like leaving or having her do it, I would probably leave as well.
Yeah, I think I'd just be like, let's just ask somebody else to do it, because she offered that and it seemed like it was a possibility. At the end of this episode, we get to see a cut of the show. Would you watch this show on HGTV? What do you think?
Again, I'm not like a massive HGTV guy, but something I think that initial cut that they sent and obviously got rejected by the studio, I'd watch that in a heartbeat. I mean, it's kind of just like it's like this backstory of kind of the downfall of a couple, which I think is really cool. And they mention it a ton of times too, but like there are the prototypical like HGTV couples where they do have a bunch of seasons where they're together, and then it's like the next season it's like, oh, like they've split off and they're having their
So you want
differences.
the Whitney cut, is what you're saying. You don't like the original. You want the voiceover, I hate Asher, this idiot holding the pottery.
I do want the Whitney cut, if I'm being completely honest, just because I think that's the most entertaining cut. I mean,
Gonna walk through fire. I'm all done playing games. It's great music.
Yeah, great song, but like Benny Safdie's character was saying, like I think that is the most interesting cut of the show, just because Asher is so unlikable, even on this show. I don't know why he's kind of a host on it because he does absolutely nothing. So I think talking shit about him at every opportunity is really the best way to go. So I'm on board with the Whitney cut for all day.
Well, and of course, Asher walks out of the room and then comes back clapping and saying, put it back in. He loves it because it's kind of like the ultimate like cuckold, he's being abused and he loves it. He sees Whitney as his green queen. And if he can play the role of the jester, as long as he can be a part of her life and, support her, he's fully in on that. And it's kind of like the ultimate devolution. He says he's changed. He's all in on them. I know you, baby. If you didn't want to be with me, and I actually truly felt that, I'd be gone. You wouldn't have to say it. I'd feel it and I'd disappear, which again, I think is another, allusion to things that are going to happen in this finale episode. But from Whitney's reaction, it's clear that this is just all her like worst nightmare.
Yeah. And in a sense too, I think it's interesting with Benny Safdie's character being there, because when it does get to the point where it's the pottery scene, he's like, we don't need to show it. Like everything past this, obviously the studio said, they didn't
He's even being a little bit of a good guy. He's like, yeah, well, we didn't even have that. It's not good.
But the thing is too, obviously Emma Stone pushes that to continue, so he has to watch it. And also, I don't believe that it's ever mentioned or they've ever talked about it that she's kind of been unhappy in this marriage for like the last year. So that's kind of the first realization, or at least proof of a realization for Asher's character of being like, oh shit, like my wife hasn't been happy for a year. So that's
But he
tough.
walks out of the room and he's changed. And it's all
Right. And
good.
then once he comes back in, that's again, I feel like I've said like extreme cringe about 10 times here, but I mean, I don't know. I feel like the acting for Nathan Fielder here is just not good, and I don't like it. And just made me extremely uncomfortable, especially with Benny Safdie and his edit guy like sitting in the corner, just like watching this all unravel. And like you said, kind of just like the blank expression on Emma Stone's face. I think she's awesome, like throughout the series. But again, it's just like extreme, like she doesn't want to be here and she hates everything. So
The finale, which is the highest rated episode at 8.9, season
man.
1, episode 10,
8.9.
Green Queen. We jump way forward in time because Whitney is fully pregnant. They've, she's basically 9 months pregnant, and they're on Rachel Ray. What do you think about this like Rachel Ray cold open? I love it personally.
I love it too. I wish, like I said, like the HGTV reality stuff, I really, really enjoy, and kind of taking it into, the cooking, because they do have tons of crossovers and like that are like awkward, and they're just like standing in the background while the rest of the show is going on. So I really enjoyed that. Even like at the end when they cut the camera work and they like don't know if they still need to act and still
They're
smile and
sitting
stuff
there
like that.
smiling and all the
Yeah.
sound,
And Rachel Ray's awesome. I mean, just having Rachel Ray cameo and just like be an asshole to them, like talking about, how their passive homes are like stupid and stuff in a sense. I
Drink,
thought it was
have some
really fun.
meatballs, check out this cleaning product. I'm hanging out with the guy from Sopranos that's way cooler than you. Fuck off.
Yeah.
Like, it's great.
Yeah, I back it.
And it's a good way to like introduce like, oh, hey, Whitney's pregnant now. And like you said, it is just another commentary on the awkward way of these promotions where it's like, okay, you're going to be here, but you're not really going to be a part of this conversation. You're zooming in and it's ridiculous. Then after that,
Well, yeah, the rest of the episode has absolutely nothing to do with that in a sense, but
yeah. That's just basically an intro showing like the show has premiered, which important to note, not on network television, premiered on a streamer only,
True.
not even on the real HGTV. Nobody can find it. It's very
HGTV
similar,
Plus, I believe.
very similar to The Curse, where it's like, where can I watch this? I got to get Showtime and, Paramount Plus together. They have this Shabbat meal, which Emma Stone makes just like an awful Holocaust joke there. And then Nathan Fielder makes some weird references to Mel Brooks's humor. Nathan Fielder's make this comment of like, don't you know that there's like the same amount of indigenous people in the US as there are Jews here? And it's again just this thing of Emma Stone using this Judaism. She's using, she's like, well, I can make jokes about the Holocaust and I can say things because I converted to Judaism, but it's like these people were persecuted not because of religious values, they were persecuted because of a cultural, separation that you don't even personally have, that you're just like have attached yourself to. It's just performative nonsense, and Nathan Fielder isn't really any better in this case.
Honestly, like these first two scenes in this episode, now that we're talking about them, I kind of like. But unfortunately, after this, it's just complete mayhem. But yeah, I think it's cool commentary on like, I don't know. I feel like this is a common thing, like people trying to, find a minority group to kind of, apply themselves to. Especially, I mean, we're two, white guys talking on a podcast here. I feel like that happens a lot in the real world. So I think that's a cool commentary and definitely something I think that is relevant, especially in today's culture. But then, like you said, after that, I don't even know what's going on here, if I'm being honest.
While he's having this dinner, he gives Whitney a gift, and it's a model home, and it's this Quaista Lane home that Abshir and the little girls are living in. We haven't really talked about it because it wasn't included in the 5 episodes. The reason why they know about this home and know about Abshir is because they were squatting on this property that they owned. They decide they're going to give it to Abshir. They show up at the house and there's some man in the background kind of sneaking around, which is kind of strange. It definitely seems like something weird is happening, which is interesting because it's like this whole time the show has been playing with the idea of like, well, Whitney and Asher assume the worst about Abshir, and us as viewers realize, oh, this is just a regular guy. He's from Minnesota. He's got 2 daughters. Like, but also, the truth be told, there is some like strange shit going on with this guy. Like, why was he just living in this house where he was like not paying rent to a landlord, like, and just like assumed everything was good? And like, who is this strange man that's like walking around and staring at the camera? Like, there's question marks that you almost like ignore because you don't want to be as associated with Whitney and Asher and like the way they're being. And then at the same time, they give him the house, and like he's more concerned about like, well, who's going to pay the property taxes?
Yeah, again, I mean, like I said, I like the actor a lot, but I don't know. It's cringe. Like, again, he's pretty shady, for being honest. Like, I don't really know what's going on with him, and we don't really learn anything about him. But like I said, like that's a funny thing. Like, there's just some random guy in the background who walks in like halfway through, and he's like, "Hey, man, like go in the back. We're talking here." So maybe there's like a bunch of people back there that we don't know. And then yeah, he's like, "Oh, we're gonna give you the house," and I mean, he straight up doesn't even care, which I guess is fair because he hasn't been making rent payments for a very long time. And then he's like, "Oh, if I'm gonna have it under my name, like I'm still gonna have to do like, oh, the taxes and the insurance on it, right?" So he's always kind of still thinking about himself, even though in theory, like this is kind of a nice thing that they're doing. They've been letting these.
And of course, Fielder then admits that he was recording it when he walks away.
Oh, well, I mean, he records every conversation, of course, but he actually had the video rolling this time, which was always fun. But yeah, I mean, overall, again, kind of just cringe, and I wish we kind of just knew more about the dad's character here, so we kind of have a better understanding of what does he do in his life. I don't know. He's just some guy who lives in their house. So I wish the development on some of these side characters was just a little bit stronger.
So then the next day, they're finishing making their house ready for the baby. Their boy Freckle basically like turns off the passive house in one particular room, which I think is pretty ironic because it's like, oh wow, these passive houses are not even safe for a baby to be in.
And that's kind of like the whole thermos idea too, of like they're obviously installing an air conditioning unit in the baby's room because they don't want the baby to be like extremely overheated and stuff during the summer. So it's like these passive houses, they don't even really
They're like a hot car. It's like locking a puppy away.
It's like a thermos. Yeah, it's like, oh, I don't want to live with my soup. But yeah, I think it really does poke holes and has some fun with that. I think that character too, Freckle, is an underutilized one not a ton of dialogue, but this specific scene, I thought he was really funny too, being like, "Oh yeah, we can hide, this unit if it's that important to you." But his like back and forth with the guy that they or he hired, I guess the guy that he just works with, who's like really intense. I thought that comedically was actually pretty funny, just from like a dry humor perspective as well.
Yeah, that guy's like, I'm telling everybody. And then Asher's like, what the fuck was that? He's, I'm firing. He's fired today.
Yeah, Asher and Freckles' relationship is actually pretty fun too. Like the brief instances, even the truck scene where they were picking up the passive oven or whatever. That's one of my favorites in the entire series. So I wish we saw more of Freckle, but him in this episode I thought was pretty good.
So that's the first 28 minutes
Right.
of the episode. And then you have another 2/3.
Do you want me to try and explain what I think was going on?
Break it down. What happens?
Kick it off. So basically, they go to sleep here. Obviously, Emma Stone, I mean, off the bat, is very, very pregnant. So let's keep that
ready
in mind.
to burst.
Yeah, she's about to burst that bubble. But we wake up, it's just the next day, and for some reason, our boy Asher, he's sleeping on the ceiling, but Emma Stone's still sleeping on the bed like normal. It's literally like an anti-gravity machine hit this guy, and he's like trying to jump down onto the bed, but he can't like release off the ceiling. It's almost as if gravity has shifted completely only for him.
Their first thought is like, oh, it's the house. Like the pressure is weird, the baby room, go open a door, maybe I'll drop from the ceiling because it's a weird draft.
Right.
But no.
And then basically he just plays like Spider-Man for 30 minutes, and they're trying to get Emma Stone out of the house, obviously for her safety and the child's safety. But then she ends up leaving her phone. So Nathan Fielder's crawling around the ceiling in the house, and he's taking some big hits. And then he's trying to get the phone, and he almost has it, but he then like can't reach it. Just like a really extended sequence. I mean, this goes on for like a half hour or so, I would say, of just them trying to figure out what the hell's going on. And then after that, pretty much Emma Stone, she's about to burst, man. It's getting real bad. So Nathan Fielder's like, hey, like maybe if I just get out of the house entirely, like this little pressure bubble that I'm in will kind of shift back down, and gravity will become normal. So basically they get outside, and they have, of course, little like, gazebo roof thing, which is like outside, but not like completely, outside of the house. Yeah, awning. There you go. Shout out architecture terms. But basically, even when he's outside below the awning, that weird gravity shift is still effective. And then, I mean, Emma Stone pretty much just goes into full on that, she is having the baby. So it's kind of just all madness assumes after that. Obviously, they're trying to find Emma Stone a ride here, and he's just like stuck on top of the ceiling, and he can't really do anything. And then what's the timeline? Some guy comes over, right? Is it just one of their neighbors or something? Who comes over?
Well, the doula, her helper in her pregnancy, the person.
Oh, right. I didn't even realize that's who that was.
Moses, another
Right.
Jewish man that she's hired, will be there for, the circumcision after the birth. She calls him over to show up.
Right. And then basically he's like, I don't know what's going on with you, Asher, but let's just try and pull you out in the open here, and I think you'll be fine. So basically they pull him out in the open, and the gravity is still the same. Like he's hanging on for his life from this guy's hands, but he starts slipping, obviously. I mean, it's not what this guy was expecting. It's a pretty strange situation. It ends up he lets him go, and he starts floating upwards, which is interesting visually. And he ends up getting stuck in a tree, almost like a cat at the top of the tree. When he's just hanging on for dear life at the top of that. And then basically Emma Stone gets whisked away by the guy. She's taken to the hospital to give birth, since obviously she's about to pop. And then pretty much the rest of the episode just centers around kind of Nathan Fielder in this tree. Obviously the locals, initially trying to help him get out. And then they call the fire department, and they call Benny Safdie. He shows up. Yeah, a lot of crazy stuff is going down here, obviously. My main question to you, Korbin, is I don't really understand what's going on, I guess. So, of course, it's some sort of metaphor here. My thought is, fatherhood is too much weight for him, something along those lines. But I want you to hear your thoughts here, because this episode pretty much lost me. Like I said, once we got to this Spider-Man bullshit. And I guess I don't understand it.
Well, it's interesting because Benny Safdie is like, oh, this is a metaphor for fatherhood, isn't it? Like when he shows up, he's like, you're up in this tree because you're scared of being a dad. But no, he's like literally floating away, right? And as I've talked about, Benny Safdie says to him, what happened if your world turned upside down and Whitney leaves you? Asher says in the previous episode, if I realized that you didn't need me, I would just disappear. I think that's effectively what we're seeing here. She's having her baby literally at the same time that Asher's being pulled up into the sky, a la 2001, A Space Odyssey baby, and freezing up in the air. And it's almost like a reincarnation. It's like there can only be one. As his child is birthed out into the world, she's found something else that she can use, and she doesn't need Asher. He's effectively obsolete. Now that the baby is there, her sole purpose is for motherhood, and she can have her Green Queen show with her little baby, and she doesn't need her jester anymore. So Asher can cease to exist and float up. I think there's also probably a ton of other interpretations you could have. You could just say it's all mystical. He was cursed, right? It's surreal. It's I love it as an ending because it is so bold. There's like a Letterboxd review that's like, if I told you how this ended, I don't think you would believe it. Like you could spoil this for me a million times over, and I would never be like, okay, so Nathan Fielder floats away at the end of the show, like up into the air. It's ridiculous. Also, it's pretty solid acting. I know you're not a fan of what Nathan Fielder's been doing throughout this series, but I think he's like pretty convincing as a guy who's like terrified of floating off into space. And also the filmmaking looks good as well. Like they do a good job of, whatever wire work, CGI. It's effective and, thrilling of like this. I'm scared this guy's gonna, float off into space, and he does.
Yeah, I guess I think the gravity reversal is cool. And I do like your description of kind of him just not needing to be there anymore because Emma Stone kind of has something new that she can latch onto. I like that a lot more than my thought process, I guess. And I guess let's finish sort of the plot synopsis too. Obviously, like I said, he's stuck in the tree. The firefighters show up, and he's kind of freaking out, obviously. Which I mean, I agree. I think he's better dramatically in this role, but I mean, it's definitely one note. It's I'm scared for my life, which again, I feel like wouldn't be the hardest thing to act out. But then the cops are kind of, or not the cops, the firefighters are kind of dicks in a sense. They don't really understand what's going on, and they just cut the tree limb that he's on, and they have it, a floaty at the bottom where he would fall and be fine, but they don't realize what's going on. So then he just floats up into space, and he's just presumed dead, obviously, and is shown that way. But like I said, I like the homage to 2001. I think the more interesting aspect too is definitely Benny Safdie's character here, and I think maybe I'm reading this too much too, but I mean him like cursing Nathan Fielder. I feel like the episodes before, I feel like that definitely plays into like his emotional stake here, because when Nathan or Ash or whatever his name is, whenever he floats off, Benny Safdie is super emotional about it and definitely breaks down. And I thought that was the best acting that he had done the entire series. But in a sense, I don't really understand it because from my understanding of their relationship, he kind of hated Asher. They weren't really that close. So is he more like breaking
They're old
down
camp
because
friends. They've known each other for years.
I mean, he's
And
a
also,
dick to
again,
him the entire series. I
his-
think it's more of like he's crying because maybe he cursed him and he blames himself. I
Maybe,
think
yeah.
that's more of what it is than he actually cares about Asher. Because I don't think even when he's up there in the trees making fucking jokes the entire time.
I mean,
So,
yeah, he's using this moment of him like stuck up in a tree as I'm gonna shoot it with my drone, and I'm gonna stick a microphone. I'm gonna ask the firefighters to take
Yeah.
a microphone up there, and every moment of pain is being used for entertainment. And again, it's like the greed of these people is being turned against them, and it's now they're being punished for it. The locals can all stand around and gawk at these people who have kind of been turning the camera on their community, and now they can laugh at them as they float away, and they can turn to each other and say, oh, what was that, for a TV show or something? And it's all great.
and I guess going back to like the unpredictability of it, yeah, I mean, you got me there. I didn't expect the main character to float away at the end of the show because why the hell would he do that? But I don't think that specifically makes it good for any reason, just because I didn't think that would ever happen. Again, it's kind of a massive metaphor
bold.
that kind of went over my head, no pun intended. But Yeah, I don't know. This episode, I'm shocked. This is the highest rated episode. What do you say? It's like 8.8 or something. That's a few points too high.
I love it. I think it's a great
Which
switch.
is fair. I don't know. It's something for me that I just don't think it's very good in any sort of aspect. I wish like we saw a ton more Emma Stone in this. I feel like Emma Stone and Benny Safdie. Benny Safdie's sidelined pretty much the entire first half and shows up at the very end. And then Emma Stone has a strong first half, and then we basically see like one, cutaway scene after she kind of leaves, this whole situation. So it's kind of just focused on Nathan Fielder being Spider-Man for a half hour, and then the next half hour he's stuck in a tree like a useless cat. So I don't know, man. Finale wise, I guess it did more than some of the other episodes, which is cool. But yeah, for me, it just didn't really stick.
It's definitely interesting because like the last 2/3 relate the least to the plot of anything else in the prior 9 episodes.
Yeah.
But they also might say the most about what it was all about, So let's move on over to our top 5,
I
Kody.
disagree.
What was your top 5 for these 5 episodes of The Curse?
Yes, my top 5, and I've kind of been saying it the entire time in a sense, but my top 5 is going to be characters who were too sidelined in the show.
I got the top 5 side characters, so maybe we just pop back and forth.
Okay, and mine's a little bit different because mine are
Yeah.
characters who were too sidelined.
Mine were just good on the side, is what I'll call
We're
it.
definitely gonna have some overlap here. I'm sensing it already, but my number 5, I'm going with my girl Kara. I think she's really fun in kind of the scenes where we do hear her thoughts. Again, I don't really think she even really knows Emma Stone's character too well or likes her too much. But the only time we kind of really see that is like a throwaway line where she's talking to Benny Safdie. She's like, "Oh, Whitney said like we were good friends." Like, "Oh, that's interesting." And then obviously the one conversation later on where, well, I guess a couple. I mean, a little bit with the massage, and then a little bit with of course the forced promotion and all that good stuff. So I just wish that we saw more of her, even actually with the one conversation with her friend who really plays up like the Native American stereotypes to Whitney. I thought he was really funny. I wish I saw more of their kind of, interactions and just a lot more from her in general. So she's slotting it at number 5.
Brett having to bless his burrito before he eats it is great stuff. I agree with that, Kody. For me, my number 5 is Moses the doula. We've talked about him a little bit recently, but I just love how he's pulling on Asher. He's trying to get him, and he just can't get him down. And he's great in that moment. And then when he's got, he's taking Emma Stone's character to the hospital. He calls Benny Safdie on the phone. Oh, something happened with Asher. You got to go check on him. And then mama, just the whole time to Emma Stone. He's great. Number 5, Moses the doula.
Oh, Moses. My number 4, it's got to be Corbin Burns in here playing Whitney's dad. Again, he's got a micro penis, so that's why he's so low here. But Corbin Burns is a great actor. I mean, about as good as it gets. He's in Major League, like I said. He was in Psych, and he's playing Emma Stone's dad, who's a slumlord. So that's pretty awesome, I think, from a character perspective. And I wish that he had more screen time. I mean, I think he's in probably like 15 minutes tops through 10 episodes. So I wish we saw more.
Number 4 for me is Monica the news lady. She obviously gets chewed out by
Terrible pick.
Asher, which is not good. She would be higher if she did not accept the bribe of the casino story.
I don't like either of your picks so far. My number 3, it's going to be somebody we haven't talked too much about. I think it's more of just like the episode selections. But I'm going to go with Nala, who again is kind of the maybe psychic abilities girl. Again, other than the bowling scene, maybe my other favorite scene of the entire series, which was not in one of the episodes we talked about, unfortunately, but I'm going to talk about it here, is when she's guessing the amount of nails that Asher has in his hands, and she's getting it right every time. So it seems to me that we're dealing with someone with supernatural abilities, which, hey, I like superheroes. Also, I mean, the whole chicken stuff is not really explained and kind of left open to interpretation. So you don't really get a definitive answer there. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in the blanks and say that she's a superhero. But again, I wish we saw more of her and, if she actually has abilities or not.
Can't wait to hear your season 2 pitch there, Kody.
Oh, it's awesome. I'm pumped.
My number 3 is James Toledo, the governor of the San Pueblo. I just love this guy. He's walking around with a smile on his face, talking about, just spreading the good word about how the roads belong to the Pueblo people. It's Tiwa not Tewa, and he's a great guy.
I think that's your first good pick there. I definitely back that. My number 2, it's gonna be my boy Freckle. We've talked about him a little bit already, but I feel like sometimes this guy feels almost a little bit invisible when he's on screen. But then when he pops on and says something, it's like, oh damn, Freckle's there. Like I love this guy. We talked about the specific AC unit scene, which is I think is really fun for him. Again, he's always kind of just around, like helping out Asher with like construction, or if the show's going on, he's always kind of there in the background. Also, that scene I mentioned too, where he's trying to put that passive oven on the back of his truck and he ends up breaking it. Just like really good comedic relief, I think, and a fun personality, but again, kind of just barely in the show. So I wish we saw him a lot more.
Freckle is my number 1, Cody. So
Let's
I'll
go.
go ahead and jump ahead to it. Another thing that Fielder and Safdie shared in that Q&A was that Freckle was just a guy who lived in the community. His house was one of the houses they built the fake passive house around, and he had just such great chemistry with Nathan Fielder. He was always like slapping him on the back, like, you know, chatting him up, making jokes that they're like, let's just put this guy in the fucking show and let's get Freckle in it. And he was all over the place. So Freckle's my number 1. My number 2 is kind of a cheat. It's Abshir and his kids, so including Nala and his other daughter. Just get the whole crew in there, and maybe even the strange other man that was in the house. We'll include him as well. Just I want to know everything happening at Questa Lane.
I back that completely as well. I'm shocked. My number 1 did not make your list, though. I'm pretty disappointed. My number 1 is Bill. This guy is a legend, you know. He just goes with the flow, super chill at the casino, even when Nathan, dumps Gatorade all over him. Doesn't lose his cool. Still kind of a good friend, regardless of how much of an asshole this guy is. He just seems like somebody I want to go bowling with and chill. So I think Bill is the most underrated character and by far the one that was completely wasted from a potential standpoint, because we see him pretty early on and then he doesn't really show up at all for the rest of the series. So I love my boy Bill. I think he's by far my favorite character of the entire series, if I'm being completely honest.
I'm out on Bill. Not big on Bill. Cody, what was your pitch for a season 2 of Cursby?
Oh man. Okay, my pitch is amazing, so I'm excited to share. Bear with me here, it's a bit of a spiel. I'm going The Curse, season 2, The Cursed. There's a D on the end of it. Yeah, good title.
Wow.
So basically, we're going to pick up 15 years later here. We're going to have a big time gap. And we're still going to go with the relevance of the finale. So Nathan Fielder is dead. And Emma Stone, where she's picking up at, obviously this whole HGTV crap didn't really work out. She has now taken over her parents' empire as the slumlord. So obviously she's been there before. She knows the environment. She had some bad stuff happen in her TV career, and she has been forced to go back to this. And basically, obviously, her and Nathan's kid now is grown up. He's around 15, but he's just really messed up in the head. I mean, he hasn't had a dad his entire life, no father figure really. And he's joined this local Espanola gang along with Fernando, and has really just been messing some stuff up. He is 15, but he's already like drinking, doing all these drugs and stuff. A lot of gang warfare going on there. But the main character that I'm actually focusing on here is Nala, the curse girl. So she's pretty much in her prime at this point. Obviously, she's like mid-20s or so, and she actually has her own local business, but secretly she's a vigilante on the side. And basically she has obviously these psychic powers and stuff that she tries to use. But basically it's like Emma Stone is the main big bad, and Nala is trying to take her down. As Emma Stone, she's kind of following her parents' footsteps, evicting tenants unfairly. And what Nala does, she ends up cursing Nathan's kid, who I named Jimmy. So she ends up cursing Jimmy into killing Emma Stone. And that's kind of how it's set off in the beginning. So, yeah, obviously we're still going to have like all that poetic metaphor bullshit, which makes it interesting.
So it starts with Emma Stone getting murdered?
Well, no, it just starts with her cursing Jimmy
Gotcha.
to murder her, and then it goes from there. And again, like I said, we're still going to have like that deep poetic stuff, metaphors. And but this actually kind of makes it interesting to begin. So I like The Cursed.
I do like that a lot. We're living in a very similar area as well. So mine, 10 years into the future, The Curse season 2, Green Kingdom. We're going full sci-fi. Emma Stone has taken over Espanola and basically created her own green passive home slums where every single house is a little mirrored house and she's running all of them. Very similar to, like you said, she's her own little slumlord queen. She's got her little son, but then Freckle and Nala make a clone of Asher to come back and defeat Emma Stone, Whitney, and kind of, give power back to the community and the people. And Emma Stone's married to Dougie, by the way.
Oh shit! Well, you lost me there. But I like that a lot. I like the alliance of Freckle and Nala coming in to do some business
To make an Asher clone.
I'm on board. I think that'd be a better role for Nathan Fielder too, for, playing a clone of himself instead of actually whatever this character is. So I'm on board. I think greenlight both of them and just do an anthology series because I think those will both be fun.
More, less, or exactly 5. Cody, what do you think?
I don't think you're gonna like my answer, but I'm going much, much less, is what I would recommend. If I'm being completely honest, I wish I could have gone back in time and never watched that show. Not to be an absolute dick. But yeah, I don't think I just liked it in too many aspects. I would probably go much less here.
Well, to be fair, if you've now listened to this 2-hour pod and you haven't watched it, I probably wouldn't recommend you going and watching it and spending any more time. But I actually think 5 is a good number. I think if you just watch these 5, you would get the story fully, and you would still be able to talk about it culturally. So if you want to stay up on the know, check out 5 episodes of The Curse or all 10.
True. We did. Thank you for listening to this episode of First Friday 5. Hopefully we'll be back in March with another one. And if you want to be the guest, we can talk Avatar: The Last Airbender, maybe. Who knows?
Sure. Yeah. If you have a TV show you really love, come pitch it to us because, yeah, we're probably going to say yeah. But, yeah, we need more guests for TV, I think. Absolutely. We always need more guests, and we always need more listeners. Share the podcast with a friend, a family member, a dog. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one. Stay capping. Peace. Players.
What you've just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.